The F chord. Ew, am I right? I mean, who likes the F chord? But the fact of life is, sometimes we have to play an F chord. So why not make it as painless as possible? F chord is usually everyone's first introduction on the guitar to the bar chord. The bar chord meaning the bar chord being when you take your first finger and you're covering more than one string with that finger. And this is how most books will teach you to play F. First finger covering first and second strings, and then second finger on the third string, second fret, and third finger, fourth string, third fret. Usually doesn't sound like that the first time you do it. It usually sounds like this. Pretty disappointing. It's not an easy chord to make. So I'm going to give you a few tips to make it a lot less painful. Maybe even F will stand for fun instead of that other word that F usually stands for when we're trying to make this chord. Okay, so here's my first adaptation to making the F chord doable. 3, 2, 1, no bar. And then for that first string, we either just don't hit it with the pick and we only hit 3, 2, 1. Gotta be a little bit accurate there. Or you can actually take your first finger, which we normally try to play on our fingertips, right? Nice, good technique on the fingertips. And we'll let that first finger instead be a little bit sloppy and sort of flatten it out. And that way we get a clear note on the second string and a thud on the first string. But this time we do the thud on purpose. And that way we get... We want that thud. Because if we don't get the thud, if we get the open string instead, we get this. We don't want that sound. We may want that sound for some other song. That's an F major 7. We don't want F major 7 for everything all the time because it's kind of got that laughing gas sort of effect, like, ooh, I'm off in space. We don't want that when it just says F. If it says F major 7, then we'll do that. So instead, we're going to make the thud. That's what we want, the thud. Because then you just get a nice F, plain old F. That's my first and easiest suggestion for solving the problem of making an F chord. But eventually, you are going to need to learn to make bar chords. So let's talk about dealing with that bar chord. What I suggest to you, when you practice a bar chord, don't practice it down here at the first fret. That's the absolute worst, most difficult place to practice a bar chord. Why? Because first of all, the frets are the farthest apart down here, so that makes your fingers have to stretch much further to accomplish a chord shape. Second of all, there's more string tension here than anywhere else on the neck because you're right up against the place where the strings are being held up by the nut there. They're being held off of the fretboard. And so there's more string tension and the frets are further apart. It's the absolute worst place to play a bar chord. So let's just take this whole shape, right? Get your F shape happening. First fret, second fret on the third string. I'm not pushing, I'm just placing them there. Scoot it up one fret, scoot it up to the third fret. Just take the whole shape and scoot it up to the fourth fret and scoot it up to the fifth fret. And you probably have a dot on your fifth fret. Most guitars have a dot on the fifth fret. So your first finger should now be covering fifth fret on first and second string. And then second finger on the sixth fret of the third string, and third finger on the seventh fret, which probably also has a dot, of the fourth string. And we'll be strumming 4 strings. It's the same chord shape, but we're going to practice it here while our hand, our non-dominant hand for most of us, if you're right-handed, your left hand is non-dominant, and if you're left-handed, you're usually playing the other way, so you're still using your non-dominant hand, the hand with the least amount of strength, to do these things that require strength and flexibility. So you have to give yourself a break. Give yourself some time and some strategy. And that's what we're talking about today. Strategy. How to make this more doable and less painful. So we're going to practice it at the 5th fret. And how to do the bar. There is a work smarter, not harder approach to doing the bar. You see where the dent is on my finger from pressing the strings down? It's off to the side. It's on the side of my finger. It is not here. It's here. So the way we place that is you'll put your finger actually on top of the 6th fret and then roll it back to just behind the 6th fret. We don't want to be way back here. You may not know this, or you may, but the best place to make a note on the guitar is right snuggled up, right up next against the fret. If you're on top of the fret, you get kind of a thud, muted sound. And if you're way back here, it just sounds terrible. So the sweet spot is right there, snuggled up next against the fret. And now we're going to do that on 2 strings. So you'll take the pad, the squishy part of your finger, put it on top of the 6th fret, and then roll back onto the bonier part of your finger. As you can imagine, a bony surface is going to be harder than a squishy surface. So it's going to get a clearer sound. And just practice those 2 strings. Just only strum those 2 strings. And if they start to sound clear, try adding the 2nd finger on the 6th fret of the 3rd string. And then strum those 3. And after a while, and by a while I mean a couple weeks, a couple months, depending on how often you practice and how well your hand is adapting to the whole thing, then you can add that 3rd finger on the 4th string, 7th fret, and strum 4. And when that starts to sound good, try moving it, the whole mess, back 1 fret. So your 1st finger's on the 4th fret, 2nd's on the 5th, 3rd's on the 6th. Start to get that down, work your way back. 1 more fret. It's feeling a little harder to do because the frets are getting further apart and the string tension's getting stronger. And then you can practice it here. We've got an F sharp. And at last, you will wind up down here with an F chord. So, to review, making the F chord more playable, less painful. 2 options. Don't play the 1st string, and don't even bar the 1st string. And if you can, mute the 1st string by letting your 1st finger be not quite as on its fingertip as you would normally have it. Just a little more flattened out. Not completely flattened out, but a little more flattened out. And then we get a good sounding F. If you want to start learning the bar, tip number 2, go up to the 6th fret, put your finger right on top of it, and then roll back till you're on the 5th fret. Practice just those 2 strings, and then once you get that clear, add the 2nd finger. And once you get that clear, add the 3rd finger. And once you get that clear, move it back a fret. Got that clear? Move it back another fret. It's not an F chord yet. Right now it's a G chord. Move it back another one. Got an F sharp. And then once you get that clear, boom. 1st fret, we've got an F chord. But you can practice the shape up here until your hand gets used to it. Because remember, that non-dominant hand is not used to being asked to do much of anything. It might help snow shovel a little bit, maybe help with washing the dishes, but it doesn't have to use a pencil or a pen. It doesn't have to do a lot of things that require the dexterity that is used by that dominant hand on a regular basis. So be patient with that non-dominant hand as it learns strength and flexibility and things that are just a little bit unnatural, like the F chord. And once you have this chord, F, a lot of the other chords that you learn are going to be much easier. The chords you learn before it, the chords you learn after it, but once you have F, it means you can play in more keys, more songs, and you will level up as a guitar player. Now the key to learning the F chord and any bar chord is to do it in small doses. We don't want to develop carpal tunnel or some other kind of awful muscular or tendinitis kind of problem from doing this too much, too long. It's best to just practice it for a couple of minutes and then move on to something else and then come back and practice it for a couple of minutes and then move on to some other exercise. C chords, D chords, A chords, G chords, scales, and then just come back, play the F chord for even 30 seconds at a time. Don't overdo it because you're developing muscles. And we want to have some muscles left to do all those other things and to do the F chord the next day. And it should get easier and easier as long as you don't overdo it. So happy playing, and may you come to love or at least like the F chord.